Listen closely, my acolytes, to the deafening roar of absolute ruin. It is a tide of brutal green that drowns entire solar systems in endless despair. They do not march with calculated stratagems or elegant formations. They simply consume, driven by an ancient imperative burned into their very cellular structure forever. Every barricade we construct is ultimately swept away by their fury. The Emperor's most stalwart defenders are silenced beneath the crushing weight of their boundless savagery. At the heart of this storm stands a titan of scrap and malice, a beast possessing a cunning intellect hidden beneath layers of brutal, rusted iron. He is the living embodiment of their primal war cry. When he raises his colossal rotary cannon, reality itself shudders in absolute terror before the impending devastation. This crude machinery shouldn't function by any logical metric, yet it spews fiery ruin across the battlefield, powered by sheer collective belief and untamed, chaotic willpower. Their monolithic effigies of scrap iron march forward, blotting out the dying sun. These towering idols of destruction reduce the grandest fortresses to smoldering, silent ash. We face not an army, but a galactic catastrophe made flesh. Every world they touch is plunged into an eternal twilight of ash and broken steel. Our finest weaponry crumbles against their overwhelming momentum. The bravest souls are merely cast aside into the endless void, becoming forgotten remnants of a failed resistance. Even the chaotic warp bends to their collective madness. Their shamans channel crackling green energy, devastating our armored columns with crude but unstoppable psychic lightning strikes. It is a twisted manifestation of their combined fury. The very atmosphere ignites, completely purging the Emperor's faithful from the shattered surface of the ruined world. Their technology is a mockery of sacred mechanics. Machines that should be lifeless metal continue to operate, defying every established law of physics known to humanity. They hammer ruin into shape with brutal enthusiasm. Every scrap of metal becomes a tool for our destruction, welded together by madness and unyielding, chaotic zeal. Walls of reinforced adamantium offer no true sanctuary against this tide. They only delay the inevitable moment when the green storm breaches the final, failing bastions. Under the battered banners of their barbaric warlords, they find perfect unity. It is a unity forged purely for the sake of boundless, unending galactic conflict. I have studied the forbidden texts for countless cycles, searching for a fundamental weakness in their brutal logic. But there is only cold, unforgiving, systemic horror. These crumbling records speak of a menace older than the Imperium itself. A biological weapon designed by forgotten creators, left to endlessly multiply and violently consume. They are the Ork, a resilient plague upon the stars. To understand them is to gaze into a relentless abyss of pure, unadulterated instinct for warfare. There is no reasoning with this primal force, my faithful acolytes. Diplomacy is a completely alien concept to creatures whose entire existence centers on sheer brutality. We are forced to confront a reality where peace is entirely impossible. Our only remaining option is absolute defiance against the encroaching tide of absolute ruin. What you hear today, my faithful acolytes, is a desperate record extracted directly from the doomed command bunkers of the shattered Armageddon Steel Legion. This fragmented testimony details the true scale of the Ork menace. It is a terrifying chronicle of an adversary that simply cannot be negotiated with. They multiply like a fungal infection across the void. Entire planetary systems are rapidly consumed by their chaotic expansion before any warning distress signals transmit. We must confront the absolute truth of their vast numbers. The greenskin hordes represent a fundamental threat to the very survival of the glorious Imperium. To comprehend their endless aggression, we must gaze deeply into the ancient past. Their brutal genesis predates the glorious rise of mankind by countless millennia. Long before our ancestors claimed the stars, the galaxy was shaped by mysterious creators known only as the Old Ones, during a devastating celestial conflict. In their desperate struggle for supreme dominance, these enigmatic beings engineered the perfect biological weapon, They forged a terrifying race of unparalleled warriors called Krork. These magnificent Krork were towering titans of supreme muscle and disciplined warfare. They possessed advanced technological mastery that completely shames their modern, barbaric green descendants. Empowered by heavily armored exoskeletons and incredibly potent energy weapons, the Krork legions shattered entire alien empires during the mythical War in Heaven era. However, the tragic fall of their creators plunged the glorious Krork into profound evolutionary regression. Without external guidance, their majestic intellect quickly deteriorated into savagery. The towering, disciplined formations fractured into primitive tribal structures. They ultimately became the brutal orc species that continuously plagues our sacred galactic territories today entirely. Yet, it is a terrifying gestalt field, generated purely by their collective presence. The more greenskins gather together, the stronger this invisible, chaotic, psychic energy becomes. This latent energy literally warps the fabric of reality. It allows their crude mechanical contraptions to function perfectly, despite violating all known rational structural laws. Their twisted engineers, known simply as mech boys, construct devastating weaponry from absolute garbage. They rely entirely on this collective belief to ignite the firing mechanisms. If an orc truly believes his heavily dented firearm will shoot accurately, the psychic field alters probability itself to ensure a deadly projectile is launched. This is not mere superstition, but a horrific biological fact. Their sheer ignorance provides them with an undeniable tactical advantage over our rigidly logical armies. When a true warlord unites these scattered tribes, the psychic energy reaches critical mass. It summons monumental war engines capable of flattening entire fortified continents. They paint their primitive vehicles red, firmly believing the color significantly increases velocity. The horrifying reality is that the physical universe actually complies with them. Thus, the majestic legacy of the ancient Krork has been completely twisted into a perpetual cycle of unthinking destruction and endless chaotic warfare forevermore. To truly grasp their systemic horror, observe the crude mechanizations of their twisted engineers. The mech boys construct devastating machinery from discarded promethium barrels and scrap. They utilize a crude vernacular of rusted rivets and haphazardly welded plating. Every vehicle is a terrifying amalgamation of plundered Imperial tech and brutal ingenuity. Witness the colossal rotary cannon. Its firing mechanism lacks standardized calibrators entirely, yet it relentlessly cycles armor-piercing munitions at a truly catastrophic operational frequency. Driven by pure gestalt energy, these jagged barrels unleash a continuous storm of depleted uranium shells. They pulverize reinforced ceramite bulkheads into utterly silent dust. The recoil compensators are non-existent, causing structural fractures with every single thunderous volley. Yet the massive warlord simply endures the kinetic punishment without flinching. Our tactical cogitators cannot predict their logistical supply chains. They forage ammunition from the smoldering wreckage of our own fallen Astra Militarum armored regiments continuously. Behold the towering effigy designated as the God-Breaker. Its internal combustion core burns highly volatile squig fuel, venting toxic exhaust clouds that choke the planetary atmosphere. The structural integrity relies upon gravity and sheer ignorant faith. Massive hydraulic pistons groan violently under the immense weight of salvaged macro-cannon batteries strapped haphazardly. Their rudimentary void shields crackle with unstable electrical discharge. These defensive fields manage to disperse incoming las cannon barrages through entirely inexplicable quantum probability fluctuations. The physiological reality of their commanders is equally disturbing. The aggressive shamans act as living conduits, actively channeling the overwhelming psychic resonance of millions nearby. Their neurological pathways frequently overload under this tremendous strain. The resulting energetic discharge violently detonates the atmospheric pressure, creating massive, localized warp anomalies instantaneously. We have meticulously cataloged their primitive surgical procedures. Their apothecaries effortlessly staple severed limbs back onto torsos using nothing but thick industrial copper wiring. The biological resilience is utterly horrifying. Fungal spores shed from their skin constantly, ensuring a rapid atmospheric contamination that inevitably births the next monstrous generation. Even the smallest Gretchen's subservients possess specialized ecological functions. They scavenge critical battlefield components, maintaining the perpetual momentum of their crude armored divisions efficiently. Consider the atmospheric processing units they construct. These industrial smog generators intentionally pollute the air, altering the planetary climate to perfectly suit their biological needs. Within the deepest vaults of the Adeptus Mechanicus, our brightest tech priests repeatedly failed to reverse engineer this absurdly functional technology without descending into utter madness. The schematics reveal impossible geometries and paradoxical circuitry. It is a technological heresy that fiercely mocks the sacred omnissiah through its mere physical existence alone. Every tactical doctrine written by the esteemed Lord Solar Macarius becomes instantly obsolete. Conventional defensive strategies mathematically collapse when facing such an illogical mechanical adversary. The heavily fortified bastions of Hive Acheron were designed to withstand orbital bombardment, yet they are systematically dismantled by scrap metal drills and superheated welding torches. We observe their siege warfare with morbid scholarly fascination. They employ deafening sonic amplifiers to physically shatter ferrocrete foundations, bypassing our sophisticated shield generators entirely. This technological heresy has endured for millennia without a single structural collapse. Their brutal mechanics stand as a twisted monument to absolute, unyielding survival. Every attempt to cleanly purge their spores from newly colonized sectors ultimately fails completely. They are the supreme apex predators of this ruined galaxy. Their numbers swell exponentially within the shadow depths of the void. They await only a singular, terrifying catalyst to ignite the ultimate galactic conflagration. That catastrophic ignition arrived unannounced upon the ashen plains of Armageddon. The celestial augurs wept tears of static as massive space hulks blotted out the stars. Emergency klaxons shattered the terrified silence of the defensive bunkers. Commissar Vane watched the orbital defense grids fail sequentially beneath an overwhelming wave of rusted iron. The brutal reality of the WAAAGH crashed against our fortified hive cities relentlessly. It was an apocalyptic storm of unimaginable fury unleashed upon the Emperor's realm. Countless meteoric transport vessels slammed violently into the irradiated planetary crust. Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka emerged from the smoldering craters, bringing an endless tide of destruction. The warlord issued a singular, terrifying command that echoed through the poisoned atmosphere. Millions of greenskins roared in perfect, horrific unison before charging the primary gates. His colossal weapons spun rapidly, unleashing a devastating barrage of depleted uranium. The very earth fractured completely beneath the sheer weight of his merciless armored advance. The brave soldiers of the Armageddon Steel Legion held the fortified trenches valiantly. Sergeant Kale directed frantic laser volleys into the surging, unstoppable green ocean below. Their disciplined lasgun fire barely scorched the thick, rusted plating of the invaders. The armored beasts absorbed the punishment effortlessly, scaling the ferrocrete barriers with terrifying speed. Chain swords clashed violently against brutal axes forged from scavenged iron. Every defensive perimeter was heavily breached by an adversary completely devoid of fear or tactical restraint. At the vanguard of this catastrophic assault, the volatile shamans channeled unimaginable psychic horrors. They ripped jagged meteorological anomalies directly from the furiously storming warp above. A blinding flash of emerald lightning utterly vaporized a heavy bolter emplacement. The chaotic energy completely bypassed the void shields, leaving only smoking craters of ruin. Entire regiments were instantaneously expunged from the Imperial records. The psychic bombardment reduced our highly decorated armored columns to twisted heaps of entirely silent, blackened slag. Their twisted engineers brought forward abhorrent siege engines powered by volatile squig oil. Massive pistons slammed relentlessly against the sacred adamantium gates of our greatest hive cities. The deafening impact created severe structural fissures across the primary defensive bulkheads. This relentless industrial pounding promised nothing but absolute subjugation and the Emperor's sorrowful peace. Through clouds of toxic industrial steam, they hammered their chaotic will into the very foundation of the planet. Resistance seemed utterly futile against such mindless momentum. Then, the true avatar of their barbaric god arrived upon the shattered plains. The towering monolithic effigy simply crushed our main battle tanks beneath its tread. Its colossal macro cannons rotated with a terrifying mechanical screech. The ensuing bombardment systematically reduced the highest spires of human achievement into cascading avalanches of flaming debris. Through the shattered adamantium gates, the supreme warlord marched triumphantly. He waded through the burning Pharaoh-Crete ruins, casting a suffocating shadow over the terrified Imperial defenders. His colossal weapon roared with untamed mechanical fury. The resulting storm of depleted uranium shells completely pulverized the fortified trenches, leaving our finest soldiers absolutely silenced. Standard-issue energy rifles simply shattered beneath their relentless armored advance. The brave soldiers of Armageddon were tragically overwhelmed by an unstoppable physical force of nature. Amidst the smoking rubble, strict discipline offered a fleeting sanctuary. Our devoted commissars frantically rallied the broken regiments, attempting to forge a desperate line of resistance. They stood resolute against an encroaching tide of rusted iron. Every swung chainsword violently sparked against salvaged armor plates, echoing a beautifully tragic hymn of defiance. But courage alone cannot halt a systemic galactic catastrophe. Their defensive perimeters rapidly collapsed under the sheer, suffocating weight of countless, roaring, violently enthusiastic, green-skinned warriors. The horrific atmospheric distortion intensified dramatically above the battlefield. Mad shamans gleefully channeled this chaotic resonance, tearing massive, localized rifts straight into the unforgiving warp itself. Emerald lightning cascaded downward with impossible, destructive geometry. Heavily shielded bunkers were instantaneously completely vaporized, erasing our veteran commanders from the Emperor's sacred Imperial records forever. Our automated surveillance machineries failed rapidly under the extreme psychic pressure. The blinding anomalies aggressively purged any lingering hope of maintaining coherent tactical battlefield communications entirely. Upon the smoldering wreckage of our pride, they planted their rusted insignias. The battered banners radiated an aura of pure, intoxicating madness across the darkened skies. This crude symbolism deeply emboldened the savage hordes further. Millions of barbaric invaders flooded through the breached adamantium gates, completely engulfing the lower hive habitation sectors. The glorious heritage of the Armageddon regiments was violently trampled into the irradiated ash. Their ultimate sacrifices became forgotten footnotes in a terrifying alien expansion narrative. Their manic engineers enthusiastically deployed chaotic siege machineries. These rattling constructs of rusted scrap tore through layered perimeter defenses with entirely illogical physics-defying mechanical efficiency. Whirling blades of salvaged titanium viciously dismantled our primary bastions. The mechanized monstrosities relentlessly pulverized fortified guard posts into unrecognizable, heavily smoking metallic debris fields instantaneously. Toxic exhaust fumes rapidly blanketed the heavily contested engagement zones. The suffocating industrial smog perfectly adapted the planetary environment for their endlessly replicating, aggressive fungal spores. The towering effigy of brutal iron continued its cataclysmic advance relentlessly. Its gargantuan treads easily crushed the central communications spire, silencing planetary distress signals permanently. Its heavy macro cannons unleashed a devastating barrage of concentrated ruin. The structural pillars of the hive city violently fractured, threatening a total, inescapable architectural collapse. Our most revered relic weaponry fell silent amongst the burning ashes. The sacred technological marvels of humanity were rendered completely useless against this overwhelming physical tide. The final defensive perimeters shrank dramatically under the crushing pressure. A suffocating ocean of roaring green completely isolated our shattered regiments from any viable tactical retreat. Gazing upward, the brave commissar witnessed only descending orbital drop pods. The horrifying realization settled deeply. This planetary invasion was merely the violent beginning of extinction. The proud Steel Legion was entirely shattered. Sergeant Kao finally knelt within the suffocating ash, his defiant laser volleys silenced forever by the overwhelming alien momentum. He gazed upwards into the terrifying abyss of the warlord. There was no grand, heroic sacrifice, merely a quiet erasure from the glorious Imperial history books. Their dependable armaments were rendered completely obsolete. The burning wreckage of our finest planetary defense forces served only as stepping stones for the advancing barbarism. Even the most unyielding discipline buckled, tragically. Commissar Vane stood resolute amidst the absolute ruin, yet his righteous fury was completely swallowed by the roaring green ocean. The brutal iron crushed his fading protective barriers relentlessly. His valiant struggle concluded not in glorious martyrdom, but in the cold silence of utter systemic defeat. The sacred chain sword sputtered into permanent silence. Thus, the mighty defenders of humanity were systematically swept aside like mere dust before a raging cosmic tempest. I have recorded these tragic purges for centuries, my devoted acolytes. Yet a terrifying realization continuously haunts the darkest corners of my weary, heavily augmented mind. We narrowly survive these fragmented invasions entirely by the Emperor's grace. But what if this chaotic force is merely a fraction of their true, dormant potential? These localized incursions defy fundamental logic completely. Their latent gestalt energy bends physical reality, suggesting a horrifying, overarching unity we simply cannot fully comprehend or measure. Observe their twisted shamans channeling impossible storms. They manipulate raw cosmic fabric without complex geometric calculations, guided purely by brutal instinct and terrifying collective subconscious belief. Gravity itself violently rejects their physical presence. Massive celestial debris floats effortlessly above the ruined plains, defying the most fundamental laws established by our greatest minds. Their primitive mechanisms function on sheer ignorance alone. If millions believe a completely broken engine will accelerate, the universe obediently alters reality to match their madness. This implies a dormant psychic network spanning the entire galaxy, a terrifying connective web that links every single barbaric tribe to an undetectable, violently aggressive resonance. When they roar in absolute unison, the warp itself violently shudders. It is an unconscious chorus of pure destruction, attempting to synchronize across infinite starry expanses. Our heavily fortified bastions are merely isolated islands facing a cosmic tsunami. We are desperately fighting a biological weapon that rapidly adapts to our strictest doctrines. Consider the apocalyptic scenario of total unification. If a supreme overlord successfully gathers every scattered tribe under a singular banner, the Imperium would face absolute erasure. The resulting critical mass of psychic energy would tear reality apart. They would not conquer the stars, but simply devour the galaxy in endless, mindless warfare. They possess no grand ideological vision of imperial conquest. They fight simply because violence is the singular, terrifying justification for their robust biological existence, continuously. We are actively engaging an anomaly that simply cannot be negotiated with. They view our most desperate struggles merely as highly entertaining planetary diversions forevermore. This chilling mystery remains entirely unsolved by our greatest scholars. We can only fortify the trembling walls and pray silently against the unstoppable, approaching emerald darkness. Look upon the ashen wastes of Armageddon, my loyal acolytes. The brutal conflict eventually subsided, but it left behind permanent, jagged scars across our glorious Imperium. They did not retreat from our heavily fortified positions in defeat. They simply moved onward toward other vibrant solar systems, seeking fresh sources of highly entertaining devastation. We foolishly celebrated a temporary cessation of hostilities. In absolute reality, the green tide merely receded to gather unimaginable strength within the shadowed depths of the void. Within these silent halls of heavily guarded knowledge, we desperately catalog their cyclical return. Every brutal invasion steadily erodes our grand galactic foundations with terrifying mathematical certainty. The sacred records explicitly confirm an inescapable systemic decay. We are continuously fighting a biological engine that rapidly adapts to our most complex defensive military stratagems. They fundamentally represent a terrifying mystery the Emperor's finest cannot definitively solve. To them, our majestic cathedrals are merely brittle targets awaiting an inevitable, highly joyful demolition. The Supreme Warlord patiently waits among the silent, frozen stars. His chaotic psychic resonance continues to slowly awaken dormant millions across countless quarantined fringe worlds entirely. He does not desire absolute governance or political subjugation. The magnificent beast purely orchestrates an eternal symphony of aggressively roaring iron and unyielding planetary ruin forever. Their primitive weaponry hungers continuously for devastating mechanical discharge. We face a relentless cosmic mechanism designed exclusively to endlessly dismantle the Emperor's divine architectural achievements systematically. Mad shamans actively channel this terrifyingly expansive psychic network. The insidious emerald energy completely bypasses our sophisticated planetary defensive grids, sowing violent discord ahead of the fleet. They effortlessly tear the fragile fabric of spatial reality. This brutal metaphysical phenomenon completely defies every logical perimeter established by our highly decorated military tacticians. Our complex automated auspex arrays violently malfunction in their unnatural presence. We are effectively blinded before the impending storm of aggressively roaring rusted iron arrives totally. Therefore, the majestic Imperium continues to slowly fracture from within. We dedicate infinite resources merely to postpone an inevitable, total systemic collapse at their brutal hands. Every fiercely contested victory is ultimately just a momentary pause. The aggressively replicating green spore guarantees another terrifying invasion generation will surely follow the previous one completely. We meticulously seal these tragic accounts with hardened wax. Yet no sacred imperial lock can truly secure our fragile borders against the endless galactic wilderness forever. A profoundly unsettling silence reclaims the sacred archival vaults. The heavily augmented mechanical systems hum a mournful dirge for the uncountable worlds we have tragically forsaken entirely. I have faithfully documented every gruesome tactical failure meticulously. The terrifying reality is that our glorious defensive efforts are mathematically insufficient against this ceaseless biological tide. The unending green tempest will absolutely never truly subside. It merely waits, patiently, within the shadowed cosmos, perpetually hungering for another glorious era of violently enthusiastic ruin. May the divine master of mankind shield our fragmented minds from such immense despair. We stand unyielding against the suffocating dark. These fractured records are now officially closed forever. The brutal truth remains hidden securely within these hallowed walls, awaiting the final, undeniable dawn of catastrophic galactic silence. We are merely temporary custodians of a fragile, heavily besieged galaxy. The green tempest gathers its terrifying strength patiently within the cold, unforgiving celestial void. Their brutal mechanical effigies wait silently beneath the heavily irradiated dust. Millions of barbaric invaders dream collectively of an apocalyptic era overflowing with glorious ruin. Our heavily fortified bastions and highly sophisticated tactical doctrines offer no true salvation. The Emperor's devoted servants bleed continuously, merely to delay the inevitable extinction. Do not comfortably seek false solace in our temporary planetary victories. Every suppressed invasion merely guarantees a significantly more devastating retaliation from their supreme warlords. This tragic historical record serves as a desperate, chilling warning. The brutal biological anomaly fundamentally threatens the sacred structural integrity of our entire glorious Imperium. We must permanently fortify our trembling hearts with absolute fanatical devotion. The encroaching emerald darkness continuously hungers for the total chaotic erasure of humanity entirely. Let the stand resolute against the encroaching barbaric cosmic tide eternally. We embrace this incredibly brutal destiny, firmly holding the fragile defensive line against unending, violent madness. May our righteous courage remain utterly unbroken forever across these shattered stars. Through boundless sacrifice, we endure the grim darkness. Imperator Gloria in excelsis terra. If you enjoyed this grimdark lore journey, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more epic tales.